The unlikely hero. The gleaming hull of the celestial zenith sliced through the inky void of space, its sleek contours belying the grim purpose within. Lieutenant Jake Harper adjusted his crisp white uniform, the fabric strange against his skin after years in military fatigues. His calloused fingers brushed the hidden compartment where his compact plasma pistol nestled, a comforting weight against his ribs as he strode down the gangway. Jake's keen eyes scanned the docking bay. Alien species of every imaginable hue and configuration milled about, their chatter a cacophony of clicks, whistles, and guttural growls. The air was thick with perfumes and pheromones, mingling with the acrid tang of starship fuel. A towering blue-skinned Andorian blocked Jake's path, mandibles clicking in irritation. Credentials, it demanded, voice like gravel in a blender. Jake produced his forged ident chip with a practiced flick of the wrist. Jake Harper, security consultant. I'm here at the request of Lord Sarlacc. The Andorian's compound eyes narrowed, multifaceted surfaces glinting in the harsh bay lighting. After an agonizing moment, it grunted and waved Jake through. Heart pounding, Jake entered the ship proper. The utilitarian corridors of the docking area gave way to sumptuous hallways draped in shimmering fabrics and adorned with holographic art pieces that shifted and morphed as he passed. A serpentine Praxian slithered by, forked tongue flicking out to taste the air. Two chittering arachnoids skittered along the ceiling, mandibles working furiously as they conversed. Jake forced himself to relax, to exude the easy confidence of someone who belonged. He had trained for this, months of preparation, learning alien customs and etiquette, studying the layout of the celestial zenith. His mission was clear: gather intel on the notorious slaver Sarlacc, rumored to be hosting this exclusive auction. What exactly was being sold remained unclear, but given the clientele, Jake doubted it was anything legal. A melodic chime echoed through the ship, and a holographic display materialized before him. "Welcome, esteemed guests," a silky voice purred. "The pre-auction reception will commence in the Grand Atrium in 30 standard minutes. We hope you'll join us for refreshments and a preview of our exceptional merchandise." Jake's jaw clenched. He needed to find Sarlacc, get the intel, and get out. Simple. But as he made his way towards the atrium, a niggling sense of unease grew in his gut. Something about this whole setup felt wrong. The Grand Atrium lived up to its name. A vast circular chamber stretched before him, its domed ceiling a masterpiece of holographic engineering. Stars and nebulae swirled overhead, giving the illusion of standing in the heart of a galaxy. Aliens of every description mingled, sipping iridescent cocktails and sampling delicacies that writhed on serving platters. Jake snagged a flute of something sparkling and green, keeping his eyes peeled for Sarlacc's distinctive crimson scales. "First time at one of these little soirees?" a husky voice inquired. Jake turned to find himself face to face with a statuesque humanoid female. Her skin was a deep violet, shot through with swerving patterns of bioluminescence. 4 obsidian eyes regarded him with amusement. "That obvious, huh?" Jake replied, forcing a self-deprecating chuckle. The alien's lips quirked. "You have the wide-eyed look of a neophyte. I'm Zara, and you are?" Jake Harper, security consultant. Zara's luminous patterns pulsed. "Interesting. I wouldn't have pegged you for the bodyguard type. You seem more complex than that." Jake's pulse quickened. Was his cover already blown? He took a casual sip of his drink, buying time to formulate a response. "I like to think I have hidden depths," he said with a wink. Zara laughed, a sound like tinkling crystals. "Don't we all, darling? Tell me, what brings a security consultant to our little gathering? Surely you're not here to bid." Before Jake could answer, a hush fell over the room. A holographic stage materialized in the center of the atrium, and upon it appeared a lithe, serpentine creature. Its scales shimmered with an oily iridescence, and a mane of feathers framed its angular face. "Honored guests," it hissed, voice amplified to fill the chamber. "I am Sith, your humble auctioneer for this evening's proceedings. We have procured some truly exquisite merchandise for your pleasure and perusal." Jake's blood ran cold as 3 shimmering force fields appeared on the stage. Within each stood a female figure, their blue skin luminous under the harsh lights. They were humanoid in shape, with delicate features and flowing hair that seemed to float as if underwater. "Behold," Sith continued, 3 prime specimens of the elusive Ori race, renowned throughout the galaxy for their beauty, grace, and, shall we say, talents in the art of pleasure. The audience murmured appreciatively, many leaning forward with predatory interest. Jake fought to keep his expression neutral as revulsion churned in his gut. This wasn't an arms deal. It was a slave auction. "The bidding will commence in 1 standard hour," Sith announced. "Until then, please enjoy our hospitality and perhaps consider which of these lovely creatures you might like to take home." As the hologram faded, the gathered aliens surged forward, jockeying for a closer look at the captives. Jake hung back, mind racing. His mission parameters had just been blown to hell. He couldn't stand by and let sentient beings be sold like cattle. Not interested in the merchandise. Zora's voice startled him from his thoughts. Jake's jaw clenched. "I'm here on business, not pleasure." Zora's bioluminescent patterns flickered in what might have been skepticism. A pity. The Ori truly are remarkable creatures. I had one once, so eager to please. It took every ounce of Jake's self-control not to recoil. He forced a non-committal grunt, scanning a room for potential allies or escape routes. "If you'll excuse me," he muttered, "I need to check in with my employer." Zora's multiple eyes narrowed. "Of course. Do enjoy the party, Jake Harper. I suspect it will be a night to remember." As Jake wove through the crowd, snippets of conversation assaulted his ears. "Heard they can interface directly with your nervous system. Excellent breeding stock, if you can afford the setup costs. Always wanted to dissect one, see what makes them tick." He needed air, needed to think. Jake slipped out of the atrium and into a deserted corridor, leaning against the wall as he tried to steady his breathing. "Hey, you're not supposed to be back here." Jake whirled to find a burly saurian glaring at him, hand hovering near a nasty-looking shock baton. "Sorry," Jake said, raising his hands placatingly. Got turned around looking for the refresher. These ships all look the same to me. The saurian's reptilian eyes narrowed. "ID, now." Jake produced his forged credentials once more, praying they'd hold up under closer scrutiny. The guard examined them with agonizing slowness before grunting and jerking a clawed thumb over his shoulder. "Refreshers are that way. Don't let me catch you wandering again." Heart hammering, Jake nodded and strode in the indicated direction. As soon as he rounded the corner, he broke into a run. He needed to find the holding cells, needed to see those captive women up close. Maybe there was a way to. He skidded to a halt as he nearly collided with a shimmering force field. Beyond it stretched a sterile corridor lined with transparent cells, and in the nearest one, Jake's breath caught. One of the Ori women stood mere inches away, separated from him only by the gossamer-thin energy barrier. Up close, her alien beauty was even more striking. Luminous skin the color of a tropical sea, eyes like liquid silver, hair that seemed to float and swirl of its own accord. But it was the pain and fear in those eyes that struck Jake to his core. "Hey," he whispered, glancing nervously over his shoulder. "Can you understand me?" The woman tilted her head, regarding him curiously. When she spoke, her voice was like music given form. "I comprehend your language, yes. Though I do not understand why you address me as an equal." Jake's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" "You are clearly not one of the worthy ones," she replied. "Yet you speak to me directly, rather than issuing commands. It is puzzling." "The worthy ones," Jake repeated. "You mean the buyers?" The Ori nodded. "Those of sufficient status to earn one such as myself. It is a great honor to be chosen." Jake's stomach churned. "You can't really believe that. You're people, not property." Confusion flickered across the alien's delicate features. I do not understand. We exist to bring pleasure and companionship to the worthy ones. It is our purpose. Like hell it is, Jake growled. He glanced at the control panel beside the force field. If he could just bypass the security protocols. Step away from the merchandise. Jake froze, cursing inwardly. He turned slowly to find himself face to face with the serpentine auctioneer, flanked by two hulking guards. Sid's forked tongue flicked out, tasting the air. Jake Harper, was it not? I don't recall authorizing a private viewing for you. Jake's mind raced, searching for a plausible excuse. My apologies. I was simply conducting a routine security sweep for my employer. Can't be too careful with merchandise is valuable. The auctioneer's slitted eyes narrowed. Indeed, and who might your employer be? That would be me. A new voice joined the fray, smooth as silk and cold as ice. Jake turned to see a towering figure approach. Crimson scales gleamed in the harsh light, and yellow eyes regarded the scene with predatory interest. Salax, the very slaver Jake had come here to gather intel on. Lord Salax, Sith hissed, bowing low. I was unaware you had hired additional security. The slaver's lips curled in a razor-sharp smile. A recent acquisition. One can never be too cautious in our line of work, wouldn't you agree? Jake fought to keep his expression neutral as Svelax's clawed hand came to rest heavily on his shoulder. I do hope my overzealous employee hasn't caused any trouble. Sid's feathered crest rose and fell. No trouble at all, my lord, though perhaps a reminder about proper protocols would not go amiss. Of course, Salax purred. Come, Harper. We have much to discuss before the bidding begins. As they walked away, Jake risked a glance back at the Ori woman. Her silver eyes met his, a flicker of something passing between them. Understanding, hope. He would find a way to free her, to free all of them, no matter the cost. Salax's grip tightened painfully on Jake's shoulder as they rounded a corner out of sight of the guards. In one fluid motion, the slaver slammed Jake against the wall, razor-sharp claws pricking the skin of his throat. Now then, Salax growled, yellow eyes blazing. Let's dispense with the charade, shall we? Who are you really, and who sent you? Jake's mind raced, adrenaline surging through his veins. He needed to salvage this, to maintain his cover somehow. I told you, he choked out. Jake Harper, security consultant. I was hired to. The pressure on his throat increased, cutting off his words. Lie to me again, Salax hissed, and I'll have your tongue as a souvenir. You're no mere security guard. Military training, if I had to guess. So I'll ask once more, who sent you? Jake's hand inched towards the hidden compartment where his plasma pistol lay concealed. If he could just reach it. A low chuckle rumbled from Salax's chest. Go ahead, he taunted. Draw your weapon. Give me an excuse to end you right here. Their eyes locked, a silent battle of wills. Jake's fingers brushed the cool metal of his pistol, every muscle coiled and ready to strike. The tense moment was shattered by the ship-wide chime of an announcement. Attention, esteemed guests. The auction will commence in 15 standard minutes. Please make your way to the grand atrium. Salax's grip loosened a fraction, though his claws remained threateningly close to Jake's jugular. It seems we're at an impasse, the slaver mused. Kill you now and risk drawing unwanted attention, or let you live and deal with whatever pitiful scheme you're hatching. Jake forced a cocky grin, despite the fear coursing through him. Third option, he rasped. You let me go, we both attend this lovely slave auction, and we can kill each other later, after the party. To Jake's surprise, Salax threw back his head and laughed, a sound like grinding metal. Oh, I do like you, he said finally, releasing his hold. Very well, Jake Harper. We'll play this game a while longer. But know this, I'll be watching your every move. One misstep, one hint of treachery, and I'll have your innards decorating my quarters before you can blink. With a final threatening smile, Salax turned and strode towards the atrium. Jake sagged against the wall, heart hammering. He'd bought himself some time, but his situation had just become infinitely more complicated. As he made his way back to the crowded atrium, Jake's mind whirled. He needed to find a way to free the Auri women, gather intel on Salax's operations, and somehow make it off this shit alive, all while under the constant scrutiny of a homicidal slaver. Just another day at the office for a former Spec Ops soldier. The grand atrium had been transformed in his absence. The holographic ceiling now displayed a swirling vortex of credits and precious gems, while the central stage had expanded to showcase a dozen shimmering force fields. Within each stood an alien being, some humanoid, others decidedly not, all with the same haunted look in their eyes. Jake's gaze was drawn to the three Ori women he'd seen earlier. They stood with regal bearing, their luminous skin seeming to pulse with an inner light. But now that he knew what to look for, he could see the tension in their postures, the barely concealed fear. He shouldered his way through the crowd, searching for a vantage point that would give him a clear view of both the stage and the exits. As he moved, snippets of conversation assaulted his ears. Heard the Ori can synchronize with your brainwaves, anticipate your every desire. Considering a matched set, imagine the possibilities. Wonder if their blood has the same aphrodisiac properties as. Jake's jaw clenched, disgust roiling in his gut. These weren't people to the assembled aliens. They were commodities, playthings. His resolve hardened. He would find a way to end this, no matter the cost. A hush fell over the gathered crowd as Sith slithered onto the stage, his oily scales shimmering under the harsh lights. Honored guests, the auctioneer hissed, voice amplified to fill the cavernous space. The moment you've all been waiting for has arrived. Let the bidding commence. What followed was a grotesque parody of the high-stakes auctions Jake had seen in vids. Alien beings were paraded before the crowd, their attributes extolled as if they were prized livestock. Bids were placed, fortunes changing hands for the privilege of owning another sentient being. Through it all, Jake's eyes darted between the exits, the stage, and the looming presence of Salax. The slaver stood at the front, his yellow eyes gleaming with a predatory glint as each new item was presented. Finally, the moment Jake had been dreading arrived. Sid's voice rose with excitement as he announced, "And now, the crown jewels of our collection, 3 prime specimens of the elusive Auri race." The force fields containing the blue-skinned women glided to the center of the stage. Under the harsh lights, their skin shimmered, drawing gasps of admiration from the crowd. "We'll start the bidding at 1 million credits," Sith declared. "Do I hear 1 million?" Immediately, hands and other appendages shot up. The price soared higher and higher, with the aliens working themselves into a frenzy. 5 million credits. A booming voice cut through the crowd. Jake's blood ran cold as he recognized the speaker. Salax stepped forward, his crimson scales gleaming. Sith's excitement grew. 5 million from the esteemed Lord Salax. Do I hear 5.5? The bidding war heated up, and Jake's mind raced. He couldn't let this happen, but what could he do? He was outnumbered, and his cover was fragile at best. His eyes met those of the central Ori woman. In that moment, something passed between them, a spark of recognition, shared understanding. Despite her being alien, she gave a slight nod, as if to say, "I trust you." That silent exchange strengthened Jake's resolve. Slowly, he edged toward the stage, his hand moving toward his concealed plasma pistol. He had no real plan, but he knew one thing for sure: he couldn't stand by and watch these women be sold like property. Sold. Sith's triumphant hiss broke Jake's concentration. To Lord Salax for 15 million credits. The crowd erupted into applause. Salax strode toward the force fields, a victorious smirk on his face, his yellow eyes locked with Jake's. Suddenly, suspicion replaced triumph in Salax's gaze. Jake knew his time had run out. It was now or never. With practiced speed, Jake drew his plasma pistol and fired into the ceiling. The holographic display shattered in a burst of sparks, plunging the room into chaos. Aliens panicked, scattering in all directions. Jake leaped onto the stage and slammed his fist into the control panel, hoping his basic knowledge of the ship's systems would be enough. To his relief, the force fields flickered and died. The Ori women hesitated for a moment, stunned. "Come on," Jake shouted, grabbing the nearest woman's hand. "We have to move." That snapped them into action. The women moved with surprising grace, easily keeping up with Jake as they dashed toward the nearest exit. Angry shouts and the whine of energy weapons echoed behind them. Jake glanced back to see Salax chasing them, his face twisted in fury. "Stop them," Salax roared. 1,000,000 credits to anyone who brings me their heads." Jake's heart pounded as they raced through the opulent corridors of the celestial zenith. He didn't know where they were going. He had no plan beyond getting away. But as he ran, still holding the Ori woman's hand, he felt a strange, fierce joy. He might die here, probably would, but at least he was doing something that mattered. They skidded around a corner, barely avoiding a group of stunned alien guests. As they ran, Jake glanced at the woman next to him. Despite the danger, despite everything, there was a spark in her silver eyes. Hope, freedom, and maybe something more. "I'm Jake," he said between heavy breaths. A small smile played on her lips. "Lyra," she replied, her voice steady even as they fled. "Thank you, Jake of Earth. Whatever happens, you've given us a chance at real life." Jake squeezed her hand tighter as the sounds of pursuit grew louder. They would figure out the rest later. For now, it was a race to stay ahead, find an escape, and protect the bond that was forming between this human soldier and the alien women he'd risked everything to save. They found themselves cornered in a maintenance bay, the hiss of a closing blast door echoing behind them. It would hold their pursuers off for a moment, but they knew it was only a matter of time. Jake frantically scanned the room for something, anything that could help them escape. His eyes landed on a row of sleek, one-person escape pods. "There," he shouted, pointing. "It's a long shot, but it might be our only chance." They rushed toward the pods as alarms blared throughout the ship. The door behind them began to glow red as their pursuers started cutting through. Jake quickly helped the Ori women into the tight pods, his heart racing. Lyra was the last to enter, but she paused at the threshold, turning to him with worry in her eyes. "What about you?" she asked, her voice soft. Jake gave her a confident smile, though his heart pounded. "Don't worry about me. I'll be right behind you." The door behind them began to give way. With one final motion, Jake hit the launch controls, sending the pods shooting out into space just as Svelax's forces burst into the room. Jake's fingers closed around the escape pod's hatch just as Svelax's claws slashed through the air where his head had been a moment before. With a grunt of effort, he hauled himself inside and slammed the door shut. The sound of the slaver's enraged roar cut off abruptly as the seal engaged. Heart pounding, Jake's hands flew over the unfamiliar controls. A proximity alarm blared as Kallax pounded on the pod's exterior, the metal denting under the force of his blows. With a silent prayer to whatever cosmic forces might be listening, Jake hit what he hoped was the launch button. The pod shuddered violently, then shot out into the void of space. Jake was slammed back into his seat, the G-forces threatening to crush the air from his lungs. Through the small viewport, he caught a glimpse of the celestial zenith receding rapidly, its gleaming hull now marred by weapons fire and the chaos of his daring escape. As the initial acceleration eased, Jake allowed himself a moment of relief. They'd made it out, but their troubles were far from over. He keyed the pod's communications system, praying the Ori women had figured out how to use theirs. "Lyra, can you hear me?" For a heart-stopping moment, there was only static. Then Lyra's melodic voice filled the cramped pod. "Jake, you made it." The relief in her tone sent an unexpected warmth through him. "Barely," he replied with a wry chuckle. "Is everyone all right?" "We are unharmed," came another voice, slightly more reserved than Lyra's. "Though I confess, this method of travel is unsettling." "You get used to it," Jake assured her, even as his own stomach lurched from the pod's erratic movement. "Listen, we need to regroup. These pods aren't meant for long-distance travel. We need to find a safe place to land, and fast." "There's a small trading outpost on Nexus 7. A third Ori voice chimed in, soft but determined. "It's not far from our current trajectory. We might be able to lose ourselves in the crowds there." Jake nodded, forgetting for a moment they couldn't see him. "Good thinking. Can you transmit the coordinates?" As the data came through, Jake's console lit up with multiple incoming signals. His blood ran cold as he recognized the energy signatures. Salax's fighters, no doubt in hot pursuit. "We've got company," he warned the others. "Hold on tight. This is going to get rough." Jake pushed the tiny escape pod to its limits, weaving through a field of asteroids in a desperate attempt to lose their pursuers. Energy blasts sizzled past, close enough that he could feel the heat through the pod's hull. "Jake," Lyra's voice was tense. "There are too many of them. We cannot outrun them forever." He gritted his teeth, searching for options. "I know. We need a distraction, something to throw them off our trail." There was a moment of silence, then the second Ori woman spoke up. "Perhaps we could help with that." Jake's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" "Our people possess certain abilities," she explained. "We can project illusions, manipulate energy fields. If we combine our efforts, we might be able to create a false sensor reading, make it appear as though we've gone in a different direction." Hope surged through Jake. "That's brilliant. Can you do it?" "We can try," Lyra replied. "But we'll need to concentrate. You'll have to guide us through." What followed was a harrowing dance through space, with Jake barking course corrections, while the Ori women focused their otherworldly abilities. Slowly but surely, the pursuing ships began to veer off, chasing phantom signals that led them further and further from their true quarry. As the last of Salax's fighters disappeared from sensors, Jake let out a shaky breath. "I can't believe that worked. You ladies are full of surprises." Lyra's laughter, like chiming bells, filled the pod. "As are you, Jake of Earth. I've never met a human quite like you." The warmth in her voice sent a flutter through Jake's chest, one he quickly suppressed. This was neither the time nor the place for whatever that feeling was. "We're not out of the woods yet," he reminded them, forcing his focus back to the task at hand. "We need to reach Nexus 7 before these pods run out of life support." The next few hours were tense, with Jake constantly checking their trajectory and the rapidly dwindling power levels. But finally, mercifully, a small, rust-colored planet came into view. "There it is," the third Ori woman announced. "Nexus 7. Not much to look at, but it should provide adequate cover." As they entered the planet's atmosphere, Jake's pod began to shudder alarmingly. Warning lights flashed across his console. The systems pushed well beyond their design limits. "We're coming in hot," he warned the others. "Brace for impact." The ground rushed up to meet them. Jake's world became a blur of fire and screeching metal. With a bone-jarring crash, his pod slammed into the dusty surface of Nexus 7, skidding to a stop in a shower of sparks and debris. For a long moment, Jake just sat there, every muscle screaming in protest. He was alive, somehow. With trembling hands, he popped the emergency hatch, choking on the acrid smoke that billowed in as he stumbled out onto the alien soil. His eyes frantically searched for the other pods. "Lyra," he called out, voice hoarse. "Are you all right?" To his immense relief, he saw movement nearby. The Ori women emerged from their own battered pods, looking shaken but unharmed. Lyra's silver eyes found his, a smile of relief spreading across her face. Without thinking, Jake rushed to her, pulling her into a tight embrace. She stiffened for a moment, then melted into his arms, her breath warm against his neck. "You're all right," he murmured, the adrenaline of their escape making him bold. I was worried. Lyra pulled back slightly, her luminous skin seeming to pulse with an inner light. As were we, she said softly. You risked everything for us, Jake. We will not forget that. A discreet cough from one of the other Auri women broke the moment. I hate to interrupt, she said, a hint of amusement in her tone, but we should move. Our crash landing was hardly subtle. Jake reluctantly stepped back from Lyra, his cheeks warm. Right, of course. We need to find cover, figure out our next move. As they gathered what meager supplies they could salvage from the pods, the third Ori woman's keen eyes scanned the horizon. There, she pointed. I see structures in the distance. It must be the outpost I mentioned. Jake nodded. Good. With any luck, we can blend in with the local population, at least long enough to come up with a plan. As they set off across the dusty landscape, Jake couldn't help but marvel at the strange turn his life had taken. He'd come to the celestial zenith to gather intel on a slaver. Now here he was, on an alien world, leading a group of fugitive Ori on a quest for freedom. Whatever came next, one thing was certain: the galaxy would never be the same again. A daring escape. The twin sons of Nexus 7 beat down mercilessly as Jake and the three Ori women trudged across the barren landscape. Sweat trickled down Jake's back, his military training the only thing keeping him from collapsing in the oppressive heat. To his surprise, his alien companions seemed to be faring better, their blue skin shimmering with an iridescent sheen that appeared to deflect the harsh sunlight. You're full of surprises, Jake commented, wiping his brow. I half expected you to wilt in this heat. Lyra, walking beside him, offered a melodious laugh. Our bodies adapt quickly to new environments. It's a survival trait born of necessity. The tallest of the Ori, who had introduced herself as Naya, spoke up. Our people have been nomads for generations, Jake. We've had to evolve to survive on countless worlds. Jake nodded, a pang of sympathy coursing through him. I'm sorry. I can't imagine what that must have been like. The third Ori, Zara, her voice soft but tinged with steel, added, It made us strong. And now, thanks to you, we have a chance at true freedom. As they crested a rocky hill, the sprawling outpost of Nexus 7 came into view. A hodgepodge of ramshackle buildings and repurposed starship hulls stretched out before them, a hive of activity even in the scorching heat. All right, Jake said, his tactical mind kicking into gear. We need to blend in, find somewhere to lay low. Any ideas? Naya's silver eyes scanned the settlement. There, she pointed to a particularly run-down area on the outskirts. That looks like the kind of place that doesn't ask questions. Jake grinned. Perfect. Let's go make some new friends. As they made their way through the crowded streets, Jake couldn't shake the feeling they were being watched. His hand stayed close to his concealed plasma pistol, eyes constantly scanning for threats. They found a dilapidated cantina that seemed to cater to the outpost's less reputable clientele. Jake ushered the Ori women inside, the cool darkness a welcome respite from the heat. Stay close, he murmured as they made their way to a shadowy booth in the back. I'll get us some food and see what I can find out about getting off this rock. As Jake approached the bar, a commotion near the entrance caught his attention. His blood ran cold as he recognized the distinctive crimson scales of a Xalaxian enforcer. Attention, vermin, the alien bellowed, its voice like grinding stones. We seek fugitives, a human male and 3 Ori females. A substantial reward is offered for information leading to their capture. Jake's mind raced. They'd been found far quicker than he'd anticipated. He caught Lyra's eye across the room, a silent message passing between them. It was time to run, again. But as Jake turned to make his way back to the booth, a meaty hand clamped down on his shoulder. He found himself face to face with a hulking Kronax, its 4 eyes gleaming with greed. Well, the Kronax rumbled. Looks like today's my lucky day. Jake's training kicked in. In one fluid motion, he broke the Kronax's grip and delivered a devastating blow to its midsection. The alien doubled over, gasping for air. "Lara, now!" Jake shouted. The Ori women sprang into action. Lara raised her hands, and suddenly the cantina was filled with swirling mist. Patrons cried out in confusion as multiple images of Jake and the Ori seemed to splinter and dance before their eyes. Naya's voice cut through the chaos. "This way." Jake followed the sound, trusting in the Auri's abilities to guide them. They burst out of the cantina's back door, alarms blaring behind them. "We need transportation," Zara said as they raced through winding alleyways. Jake's eyes landed on a row of hovercycles parked nearby. "There, you ladies ever ridden one of these before?" Lara's eyes sparkled with excitement. "No, but I'm a quick learner." They commandeered two of the vehicles, Jake and Lyra on one, Naya and Zara on the other. With a roar of engines, they shot off into the desert, leaving a trail of dust and confused pursuers in their wake. As they sped across the barren landscape, Jake's mind whirled. They needed a more permanent solution, somewhere to regroup, to plan their next move. "Jake," Naya's voice crackled over the hovercycle's comm system. "I'm picking up strange energy readings ahead. It might be worth investigating." He nodded, adjusting their course. "Roger that. Lead the way." By the cosmic void, Lyra breathed, her arms tightening around Jake's waist. "It's beautiful." As they drew closer, strange symbols on the ship's hull began to glow with an eerie blue light. Jake felt a tingling sensation wash over him, and suddenly the roar of pursuing vehicles faded into silence. "Some kind of cloaking field," he muttered in awe. They brought the hovercycles to a stop near what appeared to be an airlock. As they dismounted, the door slid open with a hiss, as if welcoming them home. Jake drew his plasma pistol. Old habits die hard. "Stay behind me," he said to the Ori women. "We don't know what's in there." But as they stepped inside, lights flickered to life, revealing pristine corridors that looked as if they hadn't aged a day in millennia. Zara gasped, her eyes wide. This is Ori technology, but it's far more advanced than anything I've ever seen." Jake turned to her, brow furrowed. "What are you saying?" Naya's voice was filled with wonder. "We found it, Jake, the lost ship of our ancestors, the one that was said to hold the key to our people's salvation." As if in response to her words, a holographic figure materialized before them. A tall, regal Ori woman, her eyes filled with ancient wisdom. "Welcome, children of Auri," the hologram spoke, its voice echoing through time itself. "You have come at last. Are you ready to reclaim your destiny?" Jake looked at his companions, saw the mix of fear and hope in their eyes. Whatever came next, he knew their lives, and perhaps the fate of the entire galaxy would never be the same. "Well," he said with a wry smile, "I guess the vacation's over. Time to save a civilization." As the ancient Ori hologram began to speak, revealing secrets lost to time, Jake couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement mixed with trepidation. This was so far beyond his original mission, beyond anything he could have imagined. But as he caught Lyra's eye, saw the gratitude and growing affection there, he knew he was exactly where he needed to be. The next chapter of their adventure was just beginning, and the galaxy trembled on the edge of monumental change. Echoes of the ancients. The holographic Ori elder's voice resonated through the ancient starship, each word laden with cosmic significance. "I am Elara, keeper of the star song. Our people have awaited this moment for millennia." Jake watched in awe as the ship's interior transformed around them. Walls shimmered and shifted, revealing star charts of breathtaking complexity and beauty. Constellations he'd never seen dance before his eyes, painting a history of the universe itself. "Whoa," he breathed. "This is incredible." Lyra's hand found his, her touch sending a jolt of electricity through him. "It's our legacy, Jake. The key to freeing not just us, but all Auri." Elara's hologram nodded sullenly. "You speak truth, young one. But the path ahead is fraught with danger. The Talaxians are but one of many who would enslave our people, exploit our gifts." Naya stepped forward, her silver eyes blazing with determination. Then teach us, Ancient One. Show us how to fight back. A smile played at the corners of Ilara's luminous lips. Very well, but first, you must understand the true nature of your powers. The Ori are more than mere illusion weavers. We are the shapers of reality itself. With a wave of her hand, the star charts coalesced into a swirling vortex of energy. Jake felt a strange tugging sensation, as if the very fabric of space-time was bending around them. Cosmic strings, Zara whispered in awe. The fundamental building blocks of the universe. Ilara nodded. Yes, child. And with proper training, you can learn to manipulate them, to rewrite the laws of physics themselves. Jake's mind reeled at the implications. No wonder slavers like Thalax coveted the Auri so fiercely. With power like this, they could reshape entire worlds to their whim. But such power comes at a price, Ilara continued, her voice growing grave. It requires perfect harmony between mind, body, and spirit, and it can be corrupted, twisted to serve dark purposes. Images flashed before them, worlds consumed by chaos, civilizations torn asunder by godlike beings drunk on their own power. This is why we chose exile, Ilara explained, to protect the galaxy from those who would abuse our gifts. But now, the time has come to reclaim our destiny, to become the guardians we were always meant to be. Jake felt a weight settle on his shoulders. He was just one human, caught up in events far beyond his understanding. But as he looked at Lyra, Naya, and Zara, he saw the same mix of determination and uncertainty reflected in their eyes. So, what's the plan? He asked, squaring his shoulders. How do we turn 3 escaped slaves and one very confused human into the saviors of the galaxy? Ilara's hologram smiled enigmatically. We begin with a journey into the heart of creation itself. The ship hummed to life around them, ancient systems awakening after eons of slumber. Through the viewscreen, Jake watched in awe as the dusty landscape of Nexus 7 fell away, replaced by the star-flecked canvas of deep space. "A quick question," he said, a note of panic creeping into his voice. "Is this thing space-worthy after being buried in sand for who knows how long?" Lyra laughed, the sound like tinkling crystal. "Oh, Jake, you still think in such limited terms. This ship doesn't fly through space. It dances between the very strings of reality." As if to prove her point, the stars outside began to stretch and blur. Colors he had no name for exploded across his vision. Jake felt a momentary sensation of vertigo, as if he was falling in every direction at once. And then, just as suddenly, it stopped. The viewscreen cleared, revealing a sight that took Jake's breath away. They hovered at the edge of a vast, swirling nebula. But this was no ordinary cosmic cloud. Within its depths, he could see cities, vast metropolises of light and energy, pulsing with life. "Welcome," Ilara said, her voice filled with pride and sorrow, "to Auri Prime, the hidden heart of our civilization." Naya gasped, tears streaming down her cheeks. "It's real. All the stories, the legends, they were true." Zara's eyes were wide with wonder. "But how? How has this remained hidden for so long?" Ilara's expression grew somber. "Through great sacrifice, the nebula exists in a Pothic dimension, phased just slightly out of sync with the rest of the universe. It took the combined power of our entire race to create and maintain this sanctuary." Jake's tactical mind was already racing, assessing potential threats and strategies. And now? What happens if we bring the Ori out of hiding? "That, my friends," Ilara said, her gaze sweeping over each of them, "is where your true test begins. For the future of the Ori, and indeed the galaxy itself, rests in your hands." As their ship glided towards the shimmering cities of Auri Prime, Jake felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. He'd signed up for a simple intelligence-gathering mission. Now he was about to dive headfirst into an ancient conflict with the fate of entire civilizations hanging in the balance. He caught Lyra's eye, saw the same swirl of emotions reflected there. Whatever came next, They were in this together. Well, Jake said with a wry smile, I always wanted to see the universe. Guess I should have been more specific about which universe, huh? Lyra's laughter echoed through the ship as they plunged into the heart of Elry Prime, ready to face whatever challenges awaited them in this hidden realm of wonders and ancient power. The cities of Elry Prime grew larger in the viewscreen, their architecture defying human comprehension. Spires of crystalline light twisted in impossible geometries, pulsing with colors that seemed to shift and change with each heartbeat. As they approached, Jake noticed something odd. Wait a second, he said, squinting at the display. Where are all the people? Ilara's hologram flickered, a hint of sadness creeping into her voice. Observe closely, Jake of Earth. What you see are not merely buildings, but the Auri themselves. Realization dawned on Lyra's face. Of course, she breathed. The ultimate expression of our power. They've become one with the fabric of reality itself. Jake's mind struggled to grasp the concept. You mean, the entire city is alive, conscious? Naya nodded, her eyes shining with a mix of awe and trepidation. Our ancestors achieved a level of harmony with the cosmic strings that we can scarcely imagine. They transcended physical form entirely. But at what cost? Zara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. As if in answer, a tendril of energy reached out from the nearest structure, gently caressing their ship. Jake felt a presence brush against his mind, ancient and vast beyond comprehension. Welcome, children, a chorus of voices echoed in their thoughts. We have waited so long for this day. Jake's hand instinctively went to his plasma pistol, but Lyra placed a calming hand on his arm. It's all right, she soothed. They mean us no harm. The energy tendril coalesced into a shimmering portal before them. Through it, Jake could see a vast chamber that seemed to stretch into infinity, its walls lined with swirling patterns of light and shadow. Enter, the voices urged. Your training begins now. As they stepped through the portal, Jake felt a tingling sensation wash over him. He looked down at his hands, startled to see them shimmer and become translucent. What's happening? He asked, a note of panic in his voice. Ilara's hologram appeared beside them, her form now as insubstantial as their own. To walk among the ascended Auri, you must attune yourselves to their level of existence. Fear not, the change is temporary. Jake took a deep breath, forcing himself to relax. He'd come this far, no point in backing out now. The chamber pulsed with energy, each wave sending ripples of sensation through Jake's newly ethereal form. He watched in amazement as Lyra, Naya, and Zara began to glow, their innate connection to the cosmic strings amplified by this strange environment. Your journey has been long, the voices of the ascended Auri resonated around them, but it is only the beginning. To truly master your gifts, to become the guardians this galaxy needs, you must face the trials of the Star Song. Trials? Jake asked, trying to keep the apprehension out of his voice. What kind of trials are we talking about here? In answer, the chamber began to shift and change. The walls melted away, replaced by a vast starfield. Jake felt himself drifting, untethered from any sense of up or down. The first trial, the voices intoned, is the trial of perception. To shape reality, one must first learn to see beyond its illusions. Suddenly, Jake found himself alone in the void. Panic began to set in as he searched frantically for his companions. Lyra, he called out. Naya, Zara, where are you? They are here, the voices whispered, as are the keys to your victory. But can you perceive the truth hidden within the lies? The starfield around Jake began to warp and twist. Phantom images danced at the edge of his vision, glimpses of battles, of alien worlds, of possible futures. He saw himself leading armies, saw the Auri rising to become a dominant force in the galaxy. But something felt off. Jake closed his eyes, forcing himself to focus. He remembered Lyra's words from what felt like a lifetime ago. We exist to bring pleasure and companionship to the worthy ones. It is our purpose. No, that wasn't right. That was the lie they'd been forced to believe. "You're more than that," Jake said, his voice growing stronger. "You're not servants or weapons. You're protectors, guardians." As he spoke the words, he felt something shift within himself. When he opened his eyes, the chaotic visions had vanished. In their place stood Lyra, Naya, and Zara, their forms shimmering with newfound power. "Well done," the voices of the ascended Ori echoed with approval. "You have taken the first step on the path of true sight." Lyra's eyes met Jake's, filled with pride and something deeper. "You did it," she said softly. "You saw through the illusions." Jake grinned, still a bit shaken but bolstered by their success. "Well, I had some pretty good teachers. Now, what's next on this cosmic roller coaster?" As if in answer, the starfield around them began to coalesce, forming into a swirling vortex of energy. "The second trial," the voices announced, "is the trial of harmony. To wield the power of the cosmic strings, you must learn to resonate with the very heartbeat of the universe." Jake felt a tugging sensation, as if every atom of his being was being pulled in 1,000 different directions at once. He saw Lyra, Naya, and Zara experiencing the same discomfort, their forms fluctuating wildly. "What do we do?" Zara cried out, her voice distorted by the chaotic energies surrounding them. Naya's eyes widened in realization. "Listen," she shouted. "Can you hear it? The star song." Jake strained his senses, pushing past the cacophony of competing forces, and there, just at the edge of perception, he heard it. A faint, haunting melody that seemed to weave through the very fabric of reality. "I hear it too," Lyra said, her voice filled with wonder. "It's beautiful." As they focused on the ethereal music, Jake felt the chaotic energies begin to calm. His body, or whatever passed for a body in this strange realm, stopped fluctuating, settling into a steady rhythm. "Yes," the voices of the ascended Ori encouraged. "Let the star song guide you. Feel its patterns, its harmonies." Jake closed his eyes, allowing the cosmic melody to wash over him. He felt a connection forming, not just to Lyra, Naya, and Zara, but to the very essence of the universe itself. When he opened his eyes again, he gasped in awe. The four of them were suspended in a web of shimmering energy, each strand pulsing in perfect synchronization with the star song. "You begin to understand," the voices said, filled with pride and hope. "This is the true power of the Ori, not to dominate or control, but to nurture and protect the delicate balance of all things." As the trial of harmony faded, Jake felt a profound sense of peace settle over him. He looked at his companions, saw the same mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration on their faces. "So," he said with a weary smile, "I'm guessing there's a trial of kicking Salaxin butt coming up next." Lyra laughed, the sound harmonizing perfectly with the lingering echoes of the star song. "Oh, Jake," she said fondly, "always thinking in terms of conflict, but you're not entirely wrong." The starfield around them began to shift once more, coalescing into familiar shapes. Jake recognized the celestial zenith, Salax's auction ship, now surrounded by a massive fleet of warships. "The final trial," the voices of the ascended Ori intoned, "is the trial of choice. You have glimpsed the power at your fingertips. Now you must decide how to wield it." Jake's tactical mind kicked into overdrive as he assessed the situation. With their newfound abilities, they could easily obliterate Salax's entire operation in the blink of an eye. But as he caught Lyra's eye, he saw the same realization dawning there. That wasn't the Ori way. It wasn't their way. "We don't need to destroy them," Jake said slowly, the plan forming in his mind. "We need to show them a better path." Naya nodded, her eyes shining with approval. "Yes, we can use the star song to reach their minds, to help them see beyond their greed and fear." Zora's voice was filled with determination. "We'll free not just the slaves, but the slavers themselves from the chains of their own making." As they joined hands, Jake felt the power of the cosmic strings surging through them. The star song swelled to a crescendo, its melody carrying their intention across the vast distances of space. On the view screen, They watched as the fleet surrounding the celestial zenith began to change. Weapons powered down, slave pens opened, and one by one, beings of all species emerged, their eyes filled with newfound wonder and understanding. "You have chosen wisely," the voices of the ascended Ori said, pride evident in their tone. "You are ready now to take your place as true guardians of the galaxy." As the final trial faded away, Jake found himself back in his physical form, standing once more in the control room of the ancient Ori ship. Lyra, Naya, and Zara stood beside him, their blue skin now shimmering with an inner light that spoke of their awakened power. Ilara's hologram appeared before them, a warm smile on her face. "You have done well, children. The path ahead will not be easy, but you have proven yourselves worthy of the challenge." Jake looked at his companions, feeling a bond between them that transcended mere friendship or even love. They were connected now on a level he couldn't fully comprehend, united in purpose and power. "So," he said, a hint of his old cocky grin returning, "what's our first stop on this grand tour of galactic peacekeeping?" Lyra's answering smile was radiant. "I think it's time we paid our old friend Salax a visit. After all, we owe him a debt of gratitude." As the ancient Ori ship hummed to life around them, preparing to dance once more along the cosmic strings, Jake felt a sense of anticipation unlike anything he'd ever known. Their journey was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. But whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew they would face them together, guardians of a new age, protectors of a galaxy on the brink of transformation. The stars beckoned, and the star song sang its eternal melody. It was time to write the next chapter in the grand cosmic tale. And as they set course for their first mission, Jake couldn't help but smile. He'd signed up for a simple intelligence-gathering operation and ended up with the adventure of a lifetime. Sometimes, he mused, the universe had a funny way of working out just right. Symphony of the Cosmos. The ancient Ori ship, now christened the Harmony's Echo, glided through the shimmering pathways of the cosmic strings. Jake stood at the helm, his hands hovering over controls that responded more to thought than touch. Beside him, Lyra's eyes were closed in concentration, her luminous skin pulsing in time with the ship's ethereal hum. "I'm still not used to this," Jake muttered, watching as entire galaxies slipped past in the blink of an eye. "It's like we're surfing the universe." Naya chuckled from her position at the navigation console. "An apt metaphor, Jake of Earth. We ride the waves of creation itself." Zara's voice chimed in, tinged with excitement. "We're approaching the Salaxian fleet's last known coordinates, preparing to drop out of string space." Jake took a deep breath, centering himself as Lyra had taught him. He felt the star song thrumming through his veins, a constant reminder of the power now at their fingertips. "All right, team," he said, slipping easily into his role as tactical leader. "Remember the plan. We're not here for revenge. We're here to open eyes and change hearts." The swirling colors of string space faded, replaced by the star-flecked canvas of normal space. Before them loomed the massive form of the celestial zenith, surrounded by a flotilla of smaller craft. "Huh," Jake said, frowning at the display. "That's not what I expected." Instead of a battle-ready armada, the Salaxian ships seemed to be in disarray. Some drifted aimlessly, while others appeared to be actively fleeing the area. Lyra's silver eyes widened in surprise. "The star song, it's already at work here. Can you feel it?" Jake closed his eyes, reaching out with his newly awakened senses. And there it was, a faint melody weaving through the chaos, touching the minds aboard the enemy's ships. "Well, I'll be damned," he whispered. "Looks like our reputation preceded us." A communication request flashed on the main viewer. Jake exchanged glances with his companions before nodding to Zara. "Let's hear what they have to say." The screen flickered to life, revealing the face of Talax himself. But the once proud slaver was a far cry from the imperious figure they've encountered before. His scales were dull, his yellow eyes wide with a mixture of fear and awe. You've come," Salax said, his voice trembling. just as the dreams foretold. Jake raised an eyebrow. Dreams? Naya leaned in, her voice gentle but firm. The star song has been reaching out, hasn't it? Showing you the truth of your actions, the pain you've caused. Thalax nodded, looking almost childlike in his vulnerability. I see it all now. The lives I've ruined, the suffering I've inflicted. How could I have been so blind? Jake felt a momentary urge to gloat, to rub the slaver's nose in his misdeeds. But he pushed it aside, remembering the lessons of the ascended Ori. The real question, he said carefully, is what you're going to do about it now. A spark of something, hope perhaps, flickered in Salax's eyes. You would give me a chance to make amends. After everything I've done, Lara stepped forward, her presence radiating compassion. That is the way of the star song. All beings have the capacity for change, for growth. Even you, Salax. What followed was a flurry of activity unlike anything Jake had experienced in his military career. The Harmony's echo became the center of a massive rehabilitation effort. Former slaves were freed and offered healing, both physical and psychological. Those who had been complicit in the slave trade were given the opportunity to confront their actions and seek redemption. And through it all, the star song played on, its melody touching hearts and minds across the fleet. As Jake watched Thalax work tirelessly to undo the damage he had caused, a thought struck him. He turned to Lyra, a wry smile on his face. You know, when I signed up for this mission, I expected a lot of things. Shootouts, daring escapes, maybe even a space battle or two. But this? Cosmic therapy and rehabilitation for an entire criminal empire. That wasn't in the briefing. Lyra laughed, the sound like wind chimes in a summer breeze. The universe has a way of surprising us, Jake. I certainly never expected to find my destiny alongside a human soldier with a penchant for sarcasm. Their eyes met, and Jake felt that now familiar surge of connection. It was more than attraction, more than the bond of comrades in arms. The star song sang between them, a promise of something deep and eternal. But before he could pursue that line of thought, an alarm blared from Zara's console. We've got incoming, she shouted. Multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace. The viewer lit up with the unmistakable signatures of galactic peacekeeping forces. A gruff voice crackled over the comm system. This is Admiral Kosh of the GPF Dauntless. Salaxian vessels, power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Your reign of terror ends now. Jake's mind raced. They'd been so focused on rehabilitation, they'd forgotten about the wider consequences of Salax's actions. This could get messy, he muttered. But Naya was already moving, her hands dancing over the controls as she interfaced directly with the ship's systems. Perhaps, she said, a sly smile playing at her lips, it's time we introduce the galactic peacekeepers to a new way of thinking. The Harmony's echo pulsed with power, and Jake felt the star song swell to a crescendo. Waves of energy radiated outward, enveloping both the Salaxian fleet and the approaching peacekeepers. Admiral Kosh's voice came again, but this time it was filled with wonder rather than belligerence. By the cosmic void, what is this? I've never felt anything like it. Jake stepped forward, drawing on the diplomatic skills he never knew he had. Admiral Kosh, this is Jake Harper of the Harmony's Echo. I think it's time we all had a long talk about the future of galactic peace. What followed was a negotiation unlike any in recorded history. With the Star Song as their translator and mediator, the former slaves, the reformed Avalaxians, and the galactic peacekeepers found common ground. Old hatreds dissolved in the face of newfound understanding. Hardened criminals wept as they confronted the full weight of their actions, and lifelong soldiers began to imagine a universe where conflicts could be resolved without bloodshed. As the talks wound down, Jake found a quiet moment alone with Lyra on the ship's observation deck. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the swirling dance of stars and ships outside. So, Jake said finally, I guess this is the part where we fly off into the sunset, our work here done. Lyra turned to him, her silver eyes reflecting the starlight. "Oh, Jake," she said fondly, "our work is just beginning. The galaxy is vast, and there are so many worlds crying out for healing, for hope." Jake nodded, feeling the weight of their new responsibility settling on his shoulders. But it wasn't a burden. If anything, he felt lighter than he had in years. "You know," he said, a slow smile spreading across his face, "I think I'm actually looking forward to it." Laura's answering smile was radiant. She leaned in, and their lips met in a kiss that seemed to resonate with the very fabric of the cosmos. As they parted, Jake couldn't help but chuckle. "I don't suppose the Ascended Ori left any instructions on intergalactic dating etiquette, did they?" Laura's laughter joined his, their joy harmonizing with the ever-present melody of the star song. "I think," she said, her eyes twinkling, "we'll have to write those rules ourselves." As the Harmony's Echo prepared to embark on its next mission, Jake looked around at his unlikely family. Lyra, Naya, and Zara, the Ori women who had opened his eyes to wonders beyond imagination. The reformed Asalaxins, eager to make amends for their past. Even a contingent of galactic peacekeepers, inspired by the promise of a new approach to maintaining order in the cosmos. He thought back to that fateful day on the celestial zenith, when he'd made the split-second decision to free 3 alien captives. How could he have known it would lead to this? A journey beyond the stars, into the very heart of creation itself. As the ship hummed to life, preparing to dance once more along the cosmic strings, Jake felt a sense of anticipation unlike anything he'd ever known. The galaxy stretched out before them, vast and mysterious, and filled with possibilities. And the star song played on, a promise of adventures yet to come, echoes of eternity. The Harmony's Echo glided through the shimmering pathways of the cosmic strings, its hull pulsing with the ethereal light of 1,000 stars. Jake stood at the helm, his hands hovering over controls that seemed to anticipate his thoughts before he even formed them. The power of the star song thronged through his veins, a constant reminder of how far he'd come from the simple soldier he'd once been. "Jake," Lyra's melodic voice broke through his reverie. "We're receiving a distress signal. It's unlike anything I've ever sensed before." He turned to see his Ori companion, her silver eyes wide with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. The bond between them had only grown stronger in the months since their transformation, a connection that transcended mere physical attraction. "What do you mean, unlike anything?" Jake asked, already feeling the ship responding to their shared curiosity. Naya's voice chimed in from her position at the navigation console. "It's not coming from normal space-time. The signal, it's resonating from between the strings themselves." Zara, ever the voice of caution, spoke up. "We should be careful. Even with our new abilities, venturing into the spaces between realities could be dangerous." Jake nodded, a wry smile playing at his lips. "Dangerous and probably impossible. Sounds like a typical Tuesday for us." With a thought, he brought the Harmony's Echo to a halt, the swirling colors of string space fading to reveal the star-flecked canvas of normal space. Before them loomed a sight that took Jake's breath away. A massive tear hung in the fabric of space-time, its edges flickering with energies that defied description. Through the rift, Jake could see something. Shapes and colors that hurt his eyes to look at directly, suggestions of realities that his mind couldn't quite grasp. "By the cosmic void," Lyra breathed. "It's beautiful." Jake felt a tug at the edge of his consciousness, a faint melody that seemed to be coming from within the rift itself. "You hear that?" he asked, glancing at his companions. "The star song. It's different here. Older, somehow." Naya's eyes widened in realization. "The primordial star song," she whispered. "The very first melody of creation. I thought it was just a legend." Before they could discuss further, a burst of static crackled over the ship's comm system. A voice, distorted and barely intelligible, broke through. "Help us, reality collapsing. Chrono Weavers, please." The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. Jake exchanged glances with his team. They'd faced some wild situations in their adventures across the galaxy, but this was something else entirely. "Well," he said, drawing on reserves of courage he didn't know he had. I guess we can't ignore a call for help, even if it's coming from wherever that is. Any ideas on how we get in there without, erasing ourselves from existence? Lyra's brow furrowed in concentration. If we attune ourselves to the primordial star song, we might be able to slip between the strings without disrupting the fabric of space-time. Zara nodded, her hands already dancing over the ship's controls. I can modulate our shields to match the frequency. But Jake, once we're in there, all bets are off. Our very atoms could be rewritten by the energies we encounter. Jake took a deep breath, centering himself as he'd been taught. He felt the familiar warmth of the star song flowing through him, but there was something else now. A deeper, more primal rhythm that seemed to call to him from beyond the rift. "All right, team," he said, slipping easily into his role as leader. "Let's make history, or unmake it, whichever comes first." With a thought, Jake guided the harmony's echo towards the tear in reality. As they approached, he felt the ship shudder, its very molecules vibrating in sympathy with the strange energies emanating from the rift. And then, with a sensation that defied description, they were through. Jake's senses reeled as he tried to make sense of their new surroundings. They were everywhere and nowhere at once. Streams of possibility flowed around them, each one a window into a different version of reality. "Incredible," Naya breathed. "We're seeing the multiverse itself." Before Jake could respond, a new voice echoed through the ship. But this wasn't coming through any comm system. It resonated directly in their minds. "Greetings, children of the younger realms. We are the Chrono Weavers. We have waited an eternity for your arrival." A form coalesced before them, a being of pure energy that shifted and flowed like liquid starlight. It had no fixed shape, its appearance changing from moment to moment as if cycling through countless possible forms. Jake stepped forward, drawing on diplomatic skills he'd honed across 100 worlds. "We received your distress call. How can we help?" The Chrono Weaver's response came not in words, but in a series of impressions and images that flooded their minds. Jake saw vast cosmic looms, weaving the very fabric of space-time. He saw the Chrono Weavers, ancient beyond imagining, maintaining the delicate balance of the multiverse. And he saw the threat. A cancer in reality itself, a discordant note in the primordial star song that threatened to unravel everything. "The Void Eaters," Lyra gasped, putting words to the terrifying concept. They're consuming entire timelines, entire universes. The Chrono Weaver pulsed in affirmation. "We have held them at bay for eons, but our power wanes. We need the fresh harmony of your star song to reweave the damaged strands of creation." Jake felt the weight of cosmic responsibility settling on his shoulders. This was so far beyond anything he'd ever imagined, beyond even the wonders and terrors he'd encountered since joining with the Auri. But as he looked at his companions, he saw the same mix of determination and awe reflected in their eyes. They were in this together, guardians of a multiverse they were only beginning to understand. "All right," Jake said, a hint of his old cocky grin returning. Saving one galaxy was getting a bit routine anyway. Let's see what we can do about patching up the fabric of reality itself. As if in response to his words, a discordant shriek echoed through the void. Through the swirling streams of possibility, Jake caught glimpses of something vast and terrible. The Void Eaters were coming. "Well, team," he said, feeling the power of the star song surging through him, harmonizing with the primordial melody that permeated this strange realm. "Looks like it's time for the performance of our lives. Let's show these cosmic party crashers what happens when you mess with the harmony's echo." With that, Jake and his companions plunged into the heart of the multiversal storm. The fate of all realities hung in the balance, the primordial star song their weapon and shield against the encroaching darkness. As they faced the unimaginable threat, Jake couldn't help but marvel at the twists of fate that had brought him here. From a simple intelligence mission to the guardians of all existence, the battle for reality itself was about to begin, and somewhere in the spaces between worlds, the star song played on.